Elena Martinez looked out the window of the UES Columbia as they approached Nexus Prime. The crystal world sparkled like a giant diamond in space. She had dreamed of this moment for 3 years, ever since Earth received the invitation to join the Galactic Federation. Now she was here as Earth's first ambassador to the stars. The 3 human ships looked small next to the massive alien vessels already docked at the space station. Elena could see Captain Lisa Rodriguez on the bridge, checking their approach one more time. Dr. Amy Thompson sat nearby, reviewing her notes about the alien species they would meet today. "Ambassador, we're getting some strange looks from the other ships," Lisa said over the communication system. Elena could hear the concern in her voice. Through the window, Elena watched as elegant Etherian ships danced through space. They moved like living things, their silver hulls catching the light of Nexus Prime's twin suns. The Etherian ships were beautiful and graceful, nothing like the practical metal boxes that carried humans through space. The docking went smoothly, though Elena noticed how the station workers seemed surprised by the human ships. They whispered to each other in languages she didn't understand, pointing at the Columbia, Liberty, and Horizon. Elena tried to stay positive, but something felt wrong. The main conference hall was enormous. Hundreds of alien species had gathered for the trade summit. Elena had studied them all, but seeing them in person was overwhelming. The Etherians looked like tall, graceful elves from human fairy tales. Their leader, Counselor Celia Moonwhisper, had silver hair that seemed to glow and eyes like stars. General Zexthera represented the Vorthak Empire. She was 7 feet tall with dark green scales and yellow eyes that missed nothing. The reptilian warrior wore armor that looked like it could stop a meteor. When she spoke, her voice rumbled like distant thunder. The Hive Queen Vesandra was perhaps the strangest sight. Her insect-like body had 6 arms and compound eyes that reflected rainbow colors. She spoke through clicking sounds that a translator device changed into words. The Nebula Collective representative was just a cloud of glowing gas held together by some kind of energy field. Elena walked to the center of the hall carrying Earth's application for Federation membership. She had practiced this speech 100 times, but now her hands were shaking. The alien delegates watched her with what looked like amusement. "Honored delegates," Elena began, "I come before you as the voice of humanity. Earth seeks to join the Galactic Federation as partners in peace and progress." A sound filled the hall that Elena had not expected. Laughter. Not friendly laughter, but the kind that made her cheeks burn with embarrassment. The Etherian delegates were trying to hide their smiles behind their hands. The Vorthak soldiers made sounds that might have been chuckling. Even the dignified Counselor Celia had a small smile on her lips. "How charming," Counselor Celia said, her voice like music. "The humans think they are ready to join the Federation. Tell me, little ambassador, what exactly does your species offer the galaxy?" Elena felt her confidence slipping away. "We offer our knowledge, our willingness to learn, and our desire to help protect the peace." This time, the laughter was louder. General Zexthera stood up, her massive form casting a shadow over Elena. "Protect the peace? With what? Those tiny ships you arrived in? We've seen cargo haulers bigger than your entire fleet." Queen Vesandra's clicking laughter filled the air. "Perhaps they could carry our luggage," she said through her translator. Dr. Amy Thompson had warned Elena that this might happen. Many alien species saw humans as primitives who had barely learned to leave their home world. But Elena had hoped that meeting face-to-face would change their minds. "We may not have the largest ships," Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady. "But humanity has survived and grown for thousands of years. We've learned to work together, to solve problems, and to never give up." The Nebula Collective's voice sounded like wind through crystal caves. "Working together is admirable for children. The galaxy requires more sophisticated solutions." Counselor Celia stood gracefully, her robes flowing like water. "Ambassador Martinez, your enthusiasm is touching, but the Federation has standards. We cannot simply accept every species that asks nicely. Perhaps Earth would be better served under the protection of a more advanced civilization." The Etherian. "Republic would be happy to guide your development," The words hit Elena like a physical blow. They weren't just rejecting Earth's application. They were offering to treat humans like children who needed babysitters. Captain Lisa Rodriguez was watching from the observation area. Elena could see the anger in her friend's eyes, but Lisa stayed silent. They had agreed that Elena would handle the diplomacy while Lisa focused on military matters. "We don't need protection," Elena said, her voice growing stronger. "We need partnership. Humanity has fought wars, survived disasters, and rebuilt our civilization more times than we can count. We're not asking for charity, we're offering alliance." General Zexathara laughed again. "Alliance? What could you possibly offer us? Your ships are barely spaceworthy. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your military experience is limited to fighting each other on a single world." The vote was quick and unanimous. Earth's application for Federation membership was denied. The official reason was insufficient technological and military development. The real reason was clear in every smirking face around the hall. As Elena walked back to her ship, she felt the weight of failure on her shoulders. 3 years of preparation, the hopes of 8 billion humans, and the dream of joining the galactic community had all been crushed in less than an hour. Dr. Amy Thompson met her at the airlock. "The scientific exchange went about as well as the diplomatic meeting," she said quietly. "They think our research is cute, but useless." Captain Rodriguez was waiting in the Columbia's conference room. "The military attachés were polite enough," she reported, "but they made it clear that they see our ships as antiques. One of them suggested we might make good courier vessels for non-critical supplies." Elena sat down heavily. Through the window, she could see the massive alien ships preparing to leave Nexus Prime. Each one was larger and more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. Maybe the aliens were right. Maybe humans really weren't ready for the galaxy. "What do we do now?" Amy asked. Elena looked at her 2 closest friends and allies. They had come so far and risked so much, only to be laughed at and dismissed. But something inside her refused to accept defeat. "We proved them wrong," Elena said quietly. 3 days had passed since the humiliation at the trade summit. Elena Martinez sat in her quarters aboard the UES Columbia, staring at reports from Earth. The news services were already calling the mission a failure. Some politicians were demanding her immediate return, while others suggested that maybe the aliens were right about humanity not being ready. The alarm that suddenly screamed through the ship changed everything. Captain Lisa Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system, urgent and professional. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Long-range sensors have detected a massive hostile force approaching the outer rim." Elena rushed to the bridge where Dr. Amy Thompson was already studying the sensor readings. Her face was pale as she looked up from her screen. "It's a devourer swarm," Amy said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've only seen records of these things in the Federation archives. They're from outside our galaxy, and they consume everything in their path." On the main screen, Elena could see the threat approaching. It looked like a massive cloud of darkness dotted with points of sickly green light. Each point was actually a biomechanical ship the size of a small moon. The swarm stretched across space for millions of miles. "How many ships?" Lisa asked. Amy checked her readings again. "At least 10,000 individual units, possibly more. Each one is larger than anything in the Federation fleet." The Federation response was swift. Within hours, every available warship in the sector was moving toward the threat. Elena watched through the Columbia's windows as the greatest armada in galactic history assembled around Nexus Prime. The Etherian dreadnoughts were magnificent to see. Each ship was over 2 miles long, their hulls shining like liquid silver. They moved through space with grace and purpose, their quantum weapons charging with blue energy. Counselor Celia's flagship, the Eternal Song, led the formation like a silver arrow pointed at the heart of darkness. General Zexathara commanded the Vorthak battle group from her massive warship, the Iron Fang. The reptilian vessels looked like enormous predators, their dark hulls bristling with plasma cannons and missile pods. When they moved, they reminded Elena of sharks hunting in deep water. The hive ships were perhaps the strangest sight. Queen Vesaandra's vessels looked like giant insects, their organic hulls pulsing with internal light. As Elena watched, each Hive ship began releasing clouds of smaller fighter craft, filling space with thousands of deadly drones. Even the peaceful Nebula Collective had sent their war forms, energy beings shaped into weapons of incredible power. They flowed through space like liquid lightning, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Captain Rodriguez requested permission to join the battle fleet. The response came from Etherian Fleet Commander Lyrelei Starweaver, her musical voice, carrying clear disdain even through the communication system. "Human vessels will maintain position in the rear guard," Commander Starweaver said. "Your ships are not equipped for combat against this level of threat. Please observe and stay out of the way." Elena felt the familiar burn of humiliation, but Lisa just nodded professionally. "Understood, Commander. The human fleet will comply." As the three small Earth ships took their assigned position far behind the main battle line, Elena couldn't help but notice the looks they were getting from passing alien vessels. Some of the crew members on nearby ships were actually pointing and laughing at the tiny human fleet. Dr. Amy Thompson was working frantically at her science station, studying everything the Federation databases had about devourer swarms. What she found made her increasingly worried. "Elena, I need to send a message to the Federation fleet," Amy said urgently. "The devourers aren't just mindless destroyers, they're adaptive. They learn from every attack and change their defenses accordingly." Elena opened a communication channel to Commander Starweaver's flagship. "Etherian Command, Dr. Thompson has important tactical information about the enemy." The response was polite but dismissive. "Thank you, Ambassador Martinez, but our tactical computers have already analyzed all available data on devourer swarms. Your concern is noted." The channel closed before Amy could say another word. Elena saw the frustration on her friend's face and felt a growing sense of dread. The Federation fleet was the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. Over 5,000 ships, ranging from massive dreadnoughts to fast attack cruisers, moved in perfect formation toward the approaching swarm. Each vessel represented the pinnacle of their species' technology and military thinking. Elena watched as the first long-range weapons engaged the enemy. Quantum torpedoes from Etherian ships struck the leading devourer units with tremendous explosions. Vorthak plasma beams cut through the darkness like swords of light. Hive fighters swarmed around the enemy like angry insects, their weapons creating a constant display of destruction. For the first few hours, it looked like the Federation fleet would win easily. The advanced alien weapons tore through the first wave of devourer ships with devastating effect. Commander Starweaver's tactical reports were confident and professional as she coordinated the attack, but Amy Thompson's fears proved justified. As Elena watched in growing horror, the second wave of devourer ships showed resistance to the quantum torpedoes that had destroyed the first wave. The third wave seemed completely immune to Vorthak plasma weapons. "They're adapting faster than anyone expected," Amy said, her voice tight with concern. "Each wave learns from the last one's destruction. At this rate, the Federation weapons will be useless within hours." Elena tried again to reach Commander Starweaver, but the Etherian fleet was too busy fighting to listen to warnings from primitive humans. She could only watch as the tide of battle slowly began to turn. The devourer ships were horrible to see up close. They looked like a mixture of machine and living tissue, their dark hulls pulsing with veins of sickly light. As they adapted to Federation weapons, they began to fight back with increasing effectiveness. Commander Starweaver's confident reports became more urgent as her quantum weapons started failing against enemy hulls. General Zexathara's battle group found their plasma cannons useless against the biomechanical armor that seemed to heal itself after each hit. "The enemy is adapting to our weapons faster than we can modify them," Commander Starweaver finally admitted over the fleet communication channel. All ships switched to secondary weapon systems, but the devourers adapted to those weapons too, and then to the third backup systems. Elena realized with growing horror that the Federation fleet was running out of options. The first major casualty was a Vorthak heavy cruiser that got too close to a cluster of devourer ships. The enemy vessels surrounded it like antibodies attacking. An infection, their weapons tearing through armor that had seemed invincible just hours before. More ships began to fall as the swarm pressed forward. The beautiful Etherian vessels that had danced through space so gracefully were now fighting desperately just to survive. Hive ships that had launched thousands of fighters were pulling back as their drones proved useless against adaptive enemy. Defenses. Elena could see the panic beginning to spread through the Federation fleet. These were species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, and they were losing to an enemy they didn't understand. "We have to do something," Elena said to her friends. Captain Rodriguez was studying the tactical displays with professional intensity. The Federation commanders are thinking like the Federation has always thought. Massive ships, overwhelming firepower, technological superiority. But that's exactly what the Devourers are designed to counter. Dr. Thompson looked up from her research with sudden understanding. "The adaptation has limits. I think they can only maintain immunity to a few weapon types at once. If we could cycle through enough different systems fast enough—" Lisa smiled grimly. "Leave that to us. Human ships weren't built to overwhelm the enemy with superior technology. We built them to survive when everything goes wrong." The Federation fleet was dying. Elena Martinez watched in horror as another Etherian dreadnought exploded in a ball of silver fire. The Eternal Song, Commander Starweaver's flagship, was trailing plasma from multiple hull breaches as it tried to retreat from the advancing Devourer swarm. What had started as the galaxy's greatest military victory was becoming its worst nightmare. The massive alien ships that had seemed so powerful just hours ago were now scattered wreckage floating through space. The Devourers had adapted to every weapon the Federation possessed, and their counterattack was merciless. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood at the Columbia's tactical station, her hands moving quickly over the controls. "Elena, we need to get closer to the battle." "Closer?" Dr. Amy Thompson looked up from her science console. "Lisa, those things are tearing apart ships 10 times our size." "That's exactly why we need to get closer," Lisa replied grimly. "The Federation ships are built for overwhelming firepower. Ours are built to survive." Elena trusted Lisa's military judgment completely, but watching the destruction ahead made her stomach turn. General Zexathera's massive battlecruiser Iron Fang was surrounded by Devourer ships, its dark hull glowing red from enemy weapons. Even as Elena watched, one of its main engine sections broke away in a shower of sparks. "All Federation vessels—" "This is Admiral Starweaver," came the desperate voice over the communication channel. "Retreat to defensive positions around Nexus Prime. Repeat, all ships fall back immediately." The order came too late for many. Queen Vessandra's hive ships were trying to escape, but the organic vessels moved too slowly. Devourer weapons cut through their living hulls like acid through paper. Thousands of the insect fighters that had filled space earlier were now just glowing debris. The Nebula Collective's energy beings fared better than most, their forms shifting and changing to avoid enemy fire, but even they couldn't maintain their war shapes indefinitely. Elena watched several of them fade away like dying stars as the Devourers learned to disrupt their energy patterns. "Look at how they're fighting," Lisa said, pointing at the tactical display. "Each alien species is using their traditional tactics. The Etherians dance and strike from range. The Vorthax charge in with heavy weapons. The Hive uses swarm tactics. But the Devourers have seen all of this before." Elena understood what Lisa meant. These alien civilizations had been fighting the same way for thousands of years. Their tactics were predictable, their strategies refined but inflexible. Against an enemy that could adapt, their greatest strengths became weaknesses. The UES Columbia moved through the battle zone like a small fish swimming between giants. Elena could see damaged Federation ships all around them, their crews sending desperate distress signals. Many of the escape pods floating through space contained aliens who had never known defeat before today. "There," Lisa pointed at her screen. "The Eternal Song is in trouble." Commander Starweaver's flagship was listing badly, its silver hull blackened by enemy weapons. 3 Devourer ships were closing in for the kill, their biomechanical forms pulsing with hungry light. The Etherian crew was fighting bravely, but their quantum weapons were useless against the adapted enemy hulls. "We can't save that ship," Amy said quietly. "It's 10 times our size and has a crew of thousands." "We're not going to save the ship," Lisa replied, her hands dancing over the controls. "We're going to save the crew." Elena felt the Columbia change. Course, accelerating toward the dying Etherian flagship. Around them, space was filled with the wreckage of what had been the greatest fleet in galactic history. The irony wasn't lost on her that the three smallest ships in the battle were now among the few still capable of movement. The rescue operation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships weren't built for glory or overwhelming force. They were built by a species that had learned to survive against impossible odds. Every system had backups, every backup had alternatives, and every alternative was designed to work when everything else failed. The UES Liberty and UES Horizon joined the Columbia in a coordinated rescue effort. While Federation ships had been designed around their primary weapon systems, human ships were designed around their crews. Every inch of space could be converted for different purposes when necessary. Elena watched as Captain Rodriguez piloted their ship directly into the debris field around the Eternal Song. Devourer weapons that had torn apart massive dreadnoughts somehow missed the small, fast-moving human vessel. When they did hit, the Columbia's redundant systems kept it flying. "This is Ambassador Martinez calling the Eternal Song," Elena said over the communication channel. "We're here to help with evacuation." Commander Starweaver's voice came back, strained and desperate. "Ambassador, you need to retreat immediately. These are military vessels with trained crews. We cannot abandon ship while civilians are in danger." "With respect, Commander," Elena replied. "Right now, we're the only ships in this area that are still combat capable. Let us help." The next few minutes felt like hours. The Columbia maneuvered between the massive Devourer ships, using its small size and unpredictable movement patterns to avoid destruction. Lisa had thrown out every rule of space combat she had ever learned, instead relying on the kind of desperate improvisation that had kept humans alive through countless wars on Earth. The first group of Etherian survivors came aboard through the Columbia's cargo bay. Elena met them personally, helping injured crew members to the medical bay. Many of them looked shocked to find themselves being rescued by the primitive humans they had laughed at just days before. Commander Starweaver was among the last to leave her ship. She was tall and graceful even in defeat, her silver hair stained with blue blood from a head wound. As she stepped aboard the Columbia, she looked around at the cramped human vessel with something that might have been respect. "Your ship is much smaller than I expected," she said to Elena. "But it's still flying," Elena replied simply. The Eternal Song died in a burst of silver fire as the Devourers finished it off. Elena felt a moment of sadness for the beautiful ship, but there was no time for mourning. All around them, more Federation vessels were calling for help. The three human ships worked through the battle zone like rescue workers in a disaster area. They pulled survivors from destroyed Vorthak cruisers, picked up Hive refugees from shattered organic vessels, and even managed to stabilize some of the fading Nebula collective entities. General Zex Thera herself was rescued by the UES Horizon after her battlecruiser finally succumbed to enemy fire. The massive reptilian warrior had to crouch to fit inside the human ship's corridors, but she said nothing about the cramped conditions. Queen Vesa Andra and her surviving court were brought aboard the UES Liberty. The insect queen's clicking language filled the human ship with strange music as she tried to understand how such small vessels had survived when her great hive ships had been destroyed, as the three human ships limped back toward Nexus Prime. With their cargo of survivors, Elena realized that everything had changed. The Federation fleet was gone, scattered or destroyed by an enemy they didn't understand. The massive space station orbiting the crystal world now looked pitifully small and vulnerable. But the three human ships were still flying, damaged, overloaded with refugees, and running on backup systems, but still flying. The aliens who had laughed at Earth's tiny fleet were now dependent on those same ships for their very survival. Dr. Amy Thompson was working frantically in the Columbia's small laboratory, studying samples from destroyed Devourer ships. "I think I understand how their adaptation works," she said excitedly. "Each individual unit can share immunity with the others, but there's a limit to how much information they can process at once." Captain Rodriguez was already thinking tactically. "How do we use that against them?" "We hit them with more weapon types than they can adapt to simultaneously," Amy replied. "But it would require perfect coordination and timing." Elena looked around at the alien survivors crowding her ship. These were some of the greatest military minds in the galaxy, representatives of civilizations that had ruled the stars for millennia, and they were all looking to humanity for answers. Outside the windows, the second wave of Devourers was already approaching Nexus Prime. The war room aboard the UES Columbia had never been designed to hold so many people. Elena Martinez sat at the small table surrounded by some of the galaxy's greatest military leaders, all of them refugees on human ships they had mocked just days before. Commander Lyrelay Starweaver still looked elegant despite her injuries, but her usual confidence was gone. General Zexithara had to crouch in the low-ceilinged room, her massive form barely fitting in the space designed for humans. Queen Vesaandra's compound eyes reflected the room's lights as she tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. The second Devourer wave will reach Nexus Prime in 18 hours, Captain Lisa Rodriguez reported. Our long-range sensors show at least 15,000 individual units, each one larger than before. Impossible, General Zexithara rumbled. We destroyed most of the first wave. How can they have more ships? Dr. Amy Thompson looked up from her research terminal. They're not ships in the way we understand them. They're more like organs of a single massive organism. When we destroyed the first wave, we just gave them information about our weapons and tactics. Elena could see the despair in the alien faces around her. These were beings who had never known defeat, whose civilizations had conquered entire star systems through superior technology and overwhelming force. Now they were facing an enemy that turned their greatest strengths against them. There has to be something we can do, Commander, Starweaver said quietly. Some weapon or tactic we haven't tried yet. Actually, there is, Lisa said, standing up to activate the room's display screen. But it means throwing out everything you know about space combat. The screen showed a tactical analysis of the first battle. Elena watched as Lisa highlighted the movement patterns of different ships, showing how each species had fought according to their traditional methods. Look at this, Lisa pointed to the Etherian formations. Beautiful, graceful, perfectly coordinated. Your ships moved like dancers, striking from optimal range with maximum efficiency. Commander Starweaver nodded. The Etherian way of war has been refined over thousands of years. And that's exactly the problem, Lisa continued. The Devourers have fought civilizations like yours before. They know how advanced species fight. They expect massive ships, overwhelming firepower, and predictable tactics. She switched the display to show the human ships during the rescue operation. Elena was surprised to see how chaotic their movement looked compared to the alien formations. Human. Ships survive because we don't fight like an advanced civilization, Lisa explained. We fight like a species that's always been outgunned and outmatched. We use whatever works, we adapt constantly, and we never fight fair if we can help it. General, Zexithara leaned forward with interest. Explain. Your people build warships, Lisa said to the reptilian general. We build survivors. Every human ship has at least 6 different weapon systems because we expect the first 5 to fail. We have backup systems for our backup systems because we know something will always go wrong. Amy pulled up her analysis of the Devourer adaptation process. The enemy can maintain immunity to 3 weapon types simultaneously, but if we hit them with 4 or more different systems at the same time, their defenses will fail. Impossible, Queen Vesaandra clicked through her translator. No ship can carry that many effective weapon systems. Etherian ships can't, Elena said quietly. Vorthak ships can't. Hive ships can't. But human ships can, because we designed them expecting to fight enemies with better technology. Lisa activated another display showing the technical specifications of the 3 human vessels. Elena could see the surprise on the alien faces as they realized just how different Earth's approach to shipbuilding really was. The Columbia has railguns, missile pods, particle beams, plasma cannons, kinetic penetrators, and fusion torpedoes, Lisa explained. Plus, improvised systems we can create from spare parts during combat. Most of these weapons are inferior to yours individually, but together they give us options. Commander Starweaver studied the display with growing understanding. Your entire military philosophy is based on the assumption that you will be outmatched. Because we always have been, Elena replied. Humans spent thousands of years fighting, each other with limited resources. We learned to win through adaptation, not superiority. The next few hours were spent in intensive planning. Elena watched as the greatest military minds in the galaxy struggled to understand human tactical concepts. Everything they had learned about warfare had to be reconsidered. "You want us to ram enemy ships?" General Zexathera asked incredulously. "Only as a last resort," Lisa replied. "But yes, if it's the only weapon type they haven't adapted to, we use it." Human military doctrine is simple. Whatever works. The surviving Federation ships were gathered around Nexus Prime, their crews working frantically to modify weapon systems according to human specifications. It was a strange sight. Advanced alien technology being jury-rigged with human improvisation techniques. Elena worked with Commander Starweaver to coordinate the modified Etherian vessels. The graceful ships were being fitted with crude but effective backup weapons, their elegant lines marred by hastily attached weapon pods. "This feels wrong," Starweaver admitted as they watched her engineers install primitive kinetic launchers on a quantum battleship. "We are destroying the beauty and efficiency of our designs." "Beauty doesn't win battles against adaptive enemies," Elena replied. "Ugly solutions that work are better than elegant ones that fail." General Zexathera was having similar struggles with her Vorthak crews. The reptilian warriors were proud of their advanced plasma technology, but now they were learning to use simple explosive charges and magnetic accelerators. "My ancestors would be ashamed," the general muttered as she watched her engineers install human-designed weapon systems on her remaining ships. "Your ancestors never fought an enemy like this," Elena pointed out. "Sometimes survival requires abandoning pride." The most difficult group to work with was Queen Vessi Andra's hive mind. The insect civilization thought as a collective, making rapid tactical changes nearly impossible. But Amy Thompson found a solution by treating the hive ships like modular components instead of unified vessels. "Think of each ship as a single weapon," Amy explained to the confused Queen. "Instead of trying to coordinate thousands of fighters, use each ship for a different attack type." As the second Devourer wave approached, Elena felt a strange mixture of hope and terror. The hastily modified Federation fleet looked nothing like the elegant armada that had been destroyed in the first battle. Ships bristled with mismatched weapons, their hulls covered with improvised systems that would have horrified their designers. But for the first time since the crisis began, Elena believed they had a chance. Dr. Amy Thompson made one final discovery that changed everything. "The Devourers aren't just adapting randomly," she announced to the command group. "They're following specific patterns based on previous encounters with galactic civilizations." "What does that mean?" Elena asked. "It means they have a database of how advanced species fight," Amy replied excitedly. "But there's no entry for humans in their records. We're completely outside their experience." Captain Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Then let's give them an education they'll never forget." As the Devourer swarm closed on Nexus Prime, Elena looked around at her unlikely allies. Elegant elves working alongside primitive human weapons. Proud reptilian warriors learning improvised tactics. An insect queen trying to think like an individual instead of a collective. The Federation fleet that rose to meet the second wave bore no resemblance to the organized armada that had been destroyed before. Instead, it looked like exactly what it was: a desperate collection of survivors using every trick they could think of to stay alive. Elena realized that for the first time in their history, the galaxy's greatest civilizations were about to fight like humans. The final battle began with chaos. Elena Martinez watched from the Columbia's bridge as the improvised Federation fleet engaged the second Devourer wave. Nothing about this fight resembled the elegant warfare the galaxy had known for thousands of years. Instead, it looked like a desperate brawl between survivors who refused to die quietly. Captain Lisa Rodriguez coordinated the attack from her position aboard the Columbia, but this was unlike any military operation in galactic history. There were no formation flying, no coordinated maneuvers, no predictable tactics. Each ship fought differently, switching weapons randomly, using whatever worked and abandoning what didn't. The Etherians had learned to fight ugly. Commander Starweaver's remaining ships abandoned their graceful dancing patterns and instead darted through space like angry wasps, striking with whatever weapons they could bring to bear before moving to new positions. Their quantum cannons fired alongside crude kinetic launchers, creating a chaotic mix that confused the Devourer adaptation systems. General Zexathera's Vorthak warriors had embraced human-style improvisation with surprising enthusiasm. Elena watched as one damaged reptilian cruiser used its broken engine sections as improvised missiles, ramming them into devourer ships at full speed. Another Vorthak vessel had jury-rigged its plasma conduits to create a massive electrical discharge, weapon that existed nowhere in Federation databases. Queen Vesaandra's hive ships had perhaps changed the most. Instead of fighting as a coordinated swarm, each vessel operated independently, using different weapon systems and attack patterns. The Insect Queen had learned to think like dozens of individual captains instead of a single collective mind. "It's working," Dr. Amy Thompson reported excitedly from her science station. "The Devourers can't adapt fast enough. We're hitting them with more weapon types than their systems can process." Elena could see the confusion in the enemy formation. The biomechanical ships that had easily destroyed the First Federation fleet were now struggling against an enemy that refused to fight predictably. Every time they adapted to one weapon system, 3 more hit them from different directions. But the battle was far from won. The Devourer swarm was massive, and even confused enemies could be dangerous. Elena watched in horror as one of the surviving Etherian ships got too close to a cluster of enemy vessels and was torn apart by concentrated fire. "We're losing ships faster than we can afford," Lisa reported grimly. "We need to hit their command structure." Amy had been studying the Devourer formation for hours, looking for weaknesses in their organization. "There," she said suddenly, pointing at her screen. "That massive ship in the center of the swarm. It's not fighting, just coordinating. If we can destroy it, the rest might lose their ability to adapt as a group." Elena looked at the target Amy had identified. It was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the largest Federation dreadnought. Destroying it would require a direct assault through the heart of the enemy formation. "That's a suicide mission," Commander Starweaver said over the communication channel. She had been listening to the human analysis from her own damaged ship. "Maybe," Lisa replied, "but it's better than losing slowly, and suicide missions are something humans have experience with." The plan that developed over the next few minutes was insane by Federation standards. Instead of a coordinated assault, by the strongest available ships, the humans proposed a chaotic, multi-directional attack using every available vessel, including the damaged ones. "We hit them from all sides at once," Lisa explained to the gathered fleet commanders. "No formations, no coordination, just pure aggression. The Devourers won't know what to adapt to first." General Zexathara's laughter rumbled across the communication channel. "I like this plan. It reminds me of how my ancestors hunted in packs." The assault began with the 3 human ships leading the charge. Elena felt the Columbia accelerate toward the massive enemy formation, its hull shaking from the stress of maximum engine output. Around them, the surviving Federation vessels followed in a loose mob that looked nothing like proper military tactics. The Devourers responded with concentrated fire, their biomechanical weapons reaching out like the arms of some massive sea creature. But the chaotic human-style attack made targeting difficult. Ships wove through the formation individually, each one following its own path toward the central command organism. Elena watched as the UES Liberty took a direct hit from a Devourer weapon, its hull glowing red from the impact. But the ship kept flying, its redundant systems keeping it in the fight even as pieces of armor plating drifted away behind it. The Etherian ships were firing everything they had, their elegant hulls scarred by improvised weapon attachments. Commander Starweaver's vessel launched a spread of quantum torpedoes followed immediately by a barrage of simple kinetic projectiles, the mixture of high and low technology creating confusion in the enemy ranks. "We're through their outer perimeter," Lisa announced. "All ships concentrate fire on the command organism." The central Devourer ship was a nightmare to look at. Its biomechanical hull pulsed with veins of sickly light, and Elena could see smaller ships growing directly from its surface like parasites. It was less a vessel than a living factory, constantly producing new enemy units. Every weapon in the improvised fleet opened fire at once. Quantum beams, plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, fusion torpedoes, and dozens of improvised systems created a storm of destruction around the command organism. The creature's adaptive defenses tried desperately to counter the attack, but there were simply too many different weapon types hitting it simultaneously. Elena felt the Columbia shake as they flew directly over the massive enemy ship, launching everything they had into its central section. Around them, other ships were doing the same, each one adding its firepower to the desperate assault. the UES Horizon made the final sacrifice. Captain Sarah Kim, commanding the small human vessel, aimed her ship directly at what appeared to be the command organism's brain center and activated the self-destruct system. The explosion tore through the creature's biomechanical hull, causing secondary detonations that rippled across its entire length. Elena watched in amazement as the massive Devourer command ship began to break apart. Without its central coordination, the rest of the swarm seemed to lose direction. Individual ships continued fighting, but the organized resistance that had made them so dangerous was gone. "All ships press the attack," General Zexathera commanded. "Drive them back to whatever hell they came from." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Federation ships fought side by side with human vessels, using improvised tactics and jury-rigged weapons to push the confused Devourer swarm back toward the edge of the system. Queen Vessandra's modified hive ships swarmed over disabled enemy vessels like antibodies attacking an infection. The Etherian ships had learned to fight with brutal efficiency instead of elegant grace. The Vorthak warriors embraced the chaos of close combat, using every dirty trick the humans had taught them. When the surviving Devourers finally retreated into hyperspace, the silence that followed was deafening. Elena looked around at the debris field that had once been the galaxy's greatest fleet and felt a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. The communication channels came alive with voices from across the surviving fleet. But instead of the usual formal military reports, Elena heard something she had never expected. Laughter. "By the gods of war," General Zexthara's voice boomed across the fleet channel. "I haven't had a fight like that since I was a hatchling." Commander Starweaver's melodious voice carried a note of wonder. "Ambassador Martinez, I owe you an apology. We judged your species by the size of your ships instead of the size of your courage." Queen Vessandra's clicking laughter filled the channel. "The Hive will remember this day. Small ships, large hearts." As the surviving fleet limped back toward Nexus Prime, Elena realized that everything had changed. The Federation would rebuild, but it would never be the same. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the smallest ships carried the greatest spirits, and that survival often required abandoning pride in favor of whatever worked. 3 months later, Elena stood in the same conference hall where Earth's application had been rejected. But this time, the scene was completely different. The alien delegates weren't laughing. Instead, they rose as one when she entered, offering the formal salute reserved for honored war heroes. Counselor Celia Moonwhisper approached Elena personally, her elegant face showing genuine respect. "Ambassador Martinez, the Galactic Federation, formally requests that Earth join us not as a junior member, but as a founding member of the new Federation Defense Corps." Dr. Amy Thompson was appointed as the Federation's chief adaptive warfare specialist, her theories about flexible tactics becoming required study at every military academy in the galaxy. Captain Lisa Rodriguez received the unprecedented honor of being named the first human admiral in galactic history, tasked with teaching the human doctrine to fleets across known space. As Elena accepted Earth's new position in the galactic community, she looked out the window at the 3 small human ships docked beside the massive alien vessels. They still looked tiny compared to their neighbors, but no one was laughing anymore. The galaxy had learned that size wasn't everything, and that sometimes the greatest strength came from knowing how to survive when everything went wrong. Earth had earned its place among the stars not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the simple refusal to give up when the odds seemed impossible. Humanity had finally found its place in the galaxy, and it was exactly where they belonged, fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves, and proving that heroes came in all sizes.